Good afternoon or good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. A warm welcome to this information session on Malta's National Entrepreneurship Ecosystem, which is being held as part of Global Entrepreneurship Week, Malta. As you may know, or as you have seen, Global Entrepreneurship Week is an international celebration of entrepreneurship that is being celebrated in approximately 200 countries now. It has grown exponentially since it was introduced 15 years ago. And as an institute, as the Edward de Bono Institute, we are very proud to be the national hosts for this initiative in Malta. As you can see from my Zoom ID, my name is Leonie Baldacchino. Besides being the national host for Global Entrepreneurship Week, I am a senior academic here at the Edward de Bono Institute. And it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the session, the aim of which is to raise awareness primarily about the many different opportunities that there are for entrepreneurs in terms of the funding opportunities, in terms of the facilities that are available, the grants, the support measures, the mentoring, and so on and so forth, because many people think that we are a very small island and not much is happening. But really and truly, we have quite a vibrant entrepreneurship ecosystem. And we are very lucky to have with us this evening a long lineup of speakers who are representing many different entities from different governmental and non-governmental, as well as some private organizations, who will be sharing their insights and who will be telling you all about the services that they are offering to startups in Malta. So on this note, please bear with me for a moment. I will share my screen with you once more, because I would just like to introduce very briefly the program. Okay, so as you can see here, this is a brief introduction by myself, after which in just a few minutes time, we'll start with the first part of the session. And in the first part, we have engineer Joe Bartolo from Takeoff Incubator. We have Mr. Fabian Demicoli from the Malta Chamber of SMEs. We have Ms. Audrey Caruana from Malta Enterprise. We have Mr. Stephen Borgia and Dr. Maria Azzopardi from MCST. We also have Dr. Marta Sportelli from the Malta Chamber of Commerce, Enterprise and Industry. And we then have Mr. Klaus Peterson from Trade Malta. At that point, which should be at around 6:20, we'll stop for a break. At about 7:20, we'll start part 2 with the presentations by Milan Haluska from the Social Entrepreneurs Association, Mr. John Malia from the Malta Cooperatives Federation, Ms. Giselle Borge-Olivier from ZAR Crowdfunding, Mr. Gordon Theobald from Business Labs Co-working Space, Ms. Jessica Camilleri from Basement Boardroom, and last but certainly not least, Ms. Violetta Bonenkamp from Female Switch. And on this note, I will stop sharing once again and properly introduce engineer Joe Bartolo, who is the manager of University of Malta's very own Takeoff startup incubator. And engineer Bartolo is also reading for a PhD at the Institute. So we work very closely together as an institute and as the incubator. So Joe, thank you very much for accepting to be our very first speaker this evening. You may share your screen if you have presentation slides, or just go ahead and talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So good evening all. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for the invite, Leonie. So Takeoff is the business incubator at the University of Malta. We're nestled behind engineering, maths and physics, and a former lab here. Not many people manage to get to our site because it's a bit of a construction site. But within it, there are facilities that allow people to take the concepts and turn those into enterprises. And it's not just about the real estate that's made available for people to be able to share or use. It's all about actually the mentoring. And this is an emphasis that we do here at Takeoff. We help people to break down their thinking so that they de-risk their various enterprise thoughts and create something that will be sustainable. What drives us most is that 50% of all businesses will always fail in 5 years. International data, which has been consolidated by the findings in many countries, both in America, Canada, Australia, the Netherlands, Denmark, and UK. All of these show the same profile for any industry, any particular company in any field. They will all suffer the same fate. 50% will fail after 5 years. So how can we help them to get the most out of this? So Takeoff is not in isolation as the incubator. It forms part of the Centre for Entrepreneurship and Business Incubation, which through its program, master's program for entrepreneurship, disseminates this whole culture of how to be able to look at enterprise, to break it down into small pieces. Malta, the SEBI has actually been set up now since 2013, and we've had 166 graduates coming through who have been trained to become entrepreneurs. In the last year also, we've had another 14 graduates who've continued their studies within the center to become qualified mentors, so that they in turn, having had the training received through their master's in entrepreneurship, continue to develop the way they have to look at prospective clients at the incubator and elsewhere to help them bring about sustainable enterprise. What do we do here? We only charge 35 euros a month for the benefits of being a member of the incubator, but at least you have to have the framework of a business plan to be able to come here. We do have a lot of people coming to us with very bare bones concepts, but it's not just about the concept. Enterprise is about know-how. It's about your know-how. And importantly, that know-how has to be converted into a product or service, the solution, which has to have a paying customer. So we work them through the various stages to see if there are glaringly obvious missing parts. We never tell people what they should be doing, because that as a founder, they have to decide themselves what is best for their own enterprise and how they would like to take it forward. However, we do tell them how they could be doing it and what could be done. We are very firmly in the camp of get things going, speed up, hurry up, get going, take up the challenge. We are definitely not in the camp of fail fast or having people repeatedly trying to slam themselves against the wall. We are very much in the camp of you are in control of your enterprise. An enterprise is a sort of vehicle in which your MVP, your minimum viable product, that thing which is a prototype, which is the bare bones of what you'd like to deliver to your customers, can be tested in a lean manner so that you don't need to have bells and whistles attached to it, but you'd have a framework which will give enough of the features that are required, which will give the maximum benefits to your customers. So we will help you to go through this. But very importantly, as I mentioned the vehicle, we also allow you to have brakes on the system and steer this so you don't crash into walls. People who have done the Masters in Entrepreneurship normally leave here and then after a couple of years come back and actually continue with what they wanted to do. Most people come and change whatever they had identified as their original idea, because the first idea is not necessarily the best idea. And they would have gone away and thought about what it is that makes sense. And we always ask them a few very, very important questions. So apart from identifying what the product is for the unmet need that's out there, and the solution that they can bring about, what are the benefits? Because with these benefits, they can actually extract maximum value for customers. Very importantly, we ask, can they do this? Now, from data that we have here, many people who do come here have a concept, but can't do what they want to do. That technically would be a bit of a problem if you are not in control of a team or do not have a team with you, because you could have a team and other members of the team could have the know-how that's necessary to be able to do what you need to do. So that can be resolved. We also ask, what is the market like? i.e., what size of market are you seeing? It is quite useless trying to create something for which no market exists. CB Insights cites that 42% of all failed businesses internationally have never asked their clients what it is that they want. It seems a bit of an obvious thing, but yet people just go out there and say, this is what people want. Particularly in technical areas where people would be experts in their particular area, they have honed a solution that is elegant and possibly eloquent, and become totally enamored by the viability of all of this. And yet nobody wanted a yellow polka dot car, because they wanted a pink polka dot car instead. We also try and wean out, does this have value for customers? Some people will try and undercut themselves at times, but with the pricing structures that they give out, which is a wrong thing, which will not lead to any sort of value towards the enterprise. And this is ultimately the goal for any sort of enterprise. It must be viable, it must be economically and financially viable. Otherwise, it will just die. And this holds for all for sectors, i.e. both commercial and social enterprises. Both of them need to create the surplus. Now, here at Takeoff, we also run a scheme that's funded by the Ministry of the Economy, known as TOSFA, the Takeoff Seed Fund Award, which has been running now for the last 8 years. Details of this will always be found on our website, and including the past winners for the last years for TOSFA. TOSFA is 100,000 euros worth of funding that's made available for people to apply. The application forms are also available on our website, and provide a very succinct business plan. The application form is actually a business plan. They're engaged on this, they're mentored during the process of preparing the application, and they're also mentored, if shortlisted, for the pitching process. People who then get selected after winning the pitching contest can get up to 25,000, which is a grant. It's a grant that does not need to be repaid. It has to be executed in line with the milestones that are available for them, as indicated by their milestone plan as given to the management committee on application. And the management committee will assess and grant tranches of funding, because they're not given out all at once, by virtue of the teams having met the milestones that are requested. So I'd like to leave a bit of space if somebody would like to ask a question here, but our terms here at the incubator are easy in, easy out. All we need to use to have at least the outline of a business plan on which we can work for and towards, and also that the costs here are only 35 euros a month. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe, for a very concise overview of the services you offer at Takeoff. We have perhaps time for one question from the audience, if there are any.
If I may, if there is no one else, if I may,
Sure,
thank you. That was a great presentation. You concentrated on technological startups. What about life science startups? Are your services available for them as well?
They're perfectly in line for everybody. We cover STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and creative media. So, for example, right now we have people working in artificial intelligence for video games, green transport, ticketing systems, monitoring of air quality from ships, people creating mushroom germination kits for use in schools and food. We've got people who are creating new cheeses using new concoctions of micro mixes. No, we cover the whole realm. We work both in commercial enterprise and social enterprise. And that's the last point I wanted to make, is that our website, www.takeoff.org.mt, has a resource page, which is freely available for anybody. And on that, you have an Essentials for Enterprise, which was written by Russell Smith, which is a very concise booklet, 32 pages, which helps you to think about and break down enterprise. But very importantly also, we have a couple of animations, which are very brief, 2 to 3 minutes, and we have 49 videos, which work you through the whole process of doing enterprise. Obviously, if you want to learn more, you're more than welcome to come in and enroll for our Masters in Entrepreneurship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Have a great evening. And on this note, I would like to introduce our second speaker, Mr. Fabian D'Amicoli, who is the Head of EU Affairs and Communications at the Malta Chamber of SMEs. And I would like to point out also that Fabian will soon be graduating with the Institute's part-time evening diploma in creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And I understand that this year's cohort are all present for this session. So I thought it would be nice to have Fabian in particular from this organization. So perhaps you can relate a little bit more to that, to him as well. Fabian, are you here?
Yes.
There you are. Okay, Fabian, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Baldacchino, and good evening. It's a pleasure for me to be here once again. It's bringing lots of memories of the past two years, because I've learned a lot also from Dr. Baldacchino and also Dr. Manjon and other lecturers at the Institute. Thanks a lot. And I also congratulate all students at the Institute right now. Basically, my role at the Malta Chamber of SMEs, of course, as Dr. Baldacchino mentioned, relates to the EU affairs and communications. But of course, since we're 8 employees, of course, we contribute to all sectors. And I'm going to share my short presentation if it's, because also from experience, I've learned that it's an easier, so this needs to. So it's my present and then enlarging it. Sorry. The Malta Chamber of SMEs, previously, perhaps you've heard about it. Until 3 years ago, it was the GRTU, the General Retailers and Traders Union. So for over 70 years, the main job was of a union representing. So basically, there was the creation of the Employers Union, which was General Workers Union, and the retailers, the employers at that time, they said, we need someone to represent us. And they joined forces, basically, and the SME Chamber, previously GRTU, was created. Nowadays, of course, our role is more of a lobby. And of course, we try to offer services to our members. We have over 7,000 members. Of course, as you know, the bulk of our economy is based on SMEs, and therefore we represent a major player in our economy. And we're, of course, registered with the IER and as an employer organization and not a union nowadays. And we represent, of course, businesses, but not workers. That's something which also distinguishes us from other unions. And we are social partners, we're recognized social partners at MCSD, and therefore, whenever there's a legislation, a directive, an EU directive, of course, the government discusses and also consults with the SME Chamber. Our aim nowadays, as I mentioned, we try to assist employers. We know how busy they are. We have businesses with just one employee, for example, or self-employed, just themselves. And of course, they focus on giving the best service, trying to get as much work as possible. And therefore, they don't have time to, for example, check if there's a particular legislation coming up, or to check what schemes there are, for example, or what funds, for example, as my colleague earlier, Joe from Takeoff, mentioned, opportunities for startups and for businesses. They don't have time to check any updates on, for example, legal issues. We are also qualified to give training on consumer law, which is something very important for retailers in this case. And therefore, we try through our services to offer information and updates to our members. I mentioned information and schemes, for example, during COVID. Of course, we've seen an increase for information, increased demand for information, because of course businesses had time to learn more and to get to know more. They needed funds, they needed liquidity, and we've created a huge number of webinars and information sessions to inform our members that there are actually funds and schemes which were there before COVID, and they are still there, and perhaps they ignore them because they have enough work. And that's mainly our role. Of course, we focus on our networking events because we know businesses want to network, they want to get new businesses to know about their business and new deals, for example, and therefore I think we are quite a leaders in networking events for businesses. We've recently also organized the first ever Malta Business Awards, which they've been held on the 28th of October. We organize our annual SME conference, which this year will be held today week, and other initiatives. Also, we try to create national initiatives and campaigns like Black Friday. So tomorrow week, for example, there's Black Friday, and we try to create hype also along the hype created from the commercial aspect by businesses themselves, but also we try to assist small businesses to have a platform. And this year, we've created a new platform for businesses, which is www.blackfridaymalta.eu, for businesses, which is free to have it also as a platform for those businesses, because of course we have different sizes. We have those businesses which can afford to have their own campaign, for example, to have their own website, to have their own artwork, but there are businesses that they can't afford any of the mentioned issues. Also, our role is important when it comes to legislation, as I mentioned earlier, and consultation, and also in budget preparation. For example, we have lots of input with regards the budget proposals, and the photos and boards and committees reflects in one of our meetings with the Prime Minister and also other ministers. When it comes also another entity which we are part of, and we are in fact a shareholder, it's Business First. Business First for those startups or for any business that basically any person that decides to create a business. Business First, it's a one-stop shop. Basically, you'll go there and you'll find assistance from the VAT number and going onwards to all the basically legal aspects to create your own business. And other businesses that we are part of, I mentioned earlier the other sectors and forums we are part of, and I mentioned earlier the consumer allies that we are basically also able to give training on consumer rights to businesses. That's all from my end. Basically, I encourage anyone that would like to become a member of the Malta Chamber of SMEs. As Joe mentioned earlier, our membership fee starts from 150, for self-employed. It's slightly higher than the Takeoffs, but of course, we offer several other services, and it increases according to the size of business. However, if there's any students that would like information, we have our annual surveys and any other possible information and help that we can assist of. Please do contact us. Our email address is, I will share it on the chat also, admin@smechamber.mt. My email is fabian.demicoli@smechamber.mt, and our website, it's www.smechamber.mt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabian. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much.
Now I would like to invite Ms. Audrey Caruana, who is the coordinator for startup support at Malta Enterprise.
Hello, and thank you for having me, Dr. Baldacchino. Thank you. I'm seeing some familiar faces here, so hello to all, and hello to all the ones that I don't know yet. Fabian, thank you so much for touching upon business first. We will be mentioning something as well during my presentation. I will be attempting to share my screen. Do bear with me just a moment. Okay. So hello, something which is so far has been interesting to me as well is that the first speaker, if I'm not mistaken, was attending the creative. There was Joe, who is a student at the institute, right? Dr. Baldacchino, and also Fabian. And I'd like to add that I am actually an MENT alumni, which is that I was attending the course being offered by SEBI. So I'm seeing all this energy through the university channels as well. Right, so Malta Enterprise is better known as the country's economic development agency, where we are tasked to attract new foreign direct investment. However, there is another important aspect that in our area of operation, which is supporting local-based companies, and this includes startup as well. So the corporation supports industry in several sectors, such as software. We mentioned life sciences as well earlier on. There's game development. And we recently noticed also that the innovative local-based companies are also positioning themselves very well on an international level, which is very good. Now, having said this, Malta Enterprise strives to assist entrepreneurs during their startup phase. So we facilitate the journey from idea generation to commercialization. Now, we first start our area of support through the customer relations officers, which are located at Business First, and also at Business First. So at Business First, like Fabian said, we will be giving information with initial information on services relating to the VAT number, how an employer can engage the first employees into the business. And then other parts of information can be given towards grants. And that is something that Malta Enterprise is also known for as well. So we have different types of grants. Some of them are cash grants, and some of them are tax incentives. And some of them are aimed solely at startups, other ones are more on a general level. So the following set, which I'm going to quickly go through, all the information is available, passing on the website as well, is also there for you to go through. So Please Start is one of our popular schemes where it is seed and growth funding cash grant support measure, and it's split into two. There's a pre-business plan support where an advance payment of 4,000 euros is given for an enterprise to develop their business concept and feasibility study. So here we're looking at startups which are still going through the ideation and still I have to develop a business plan. So there's a 4,000 euro to develop the business plan, another 4,000 euro may be claimed as a reimbursement, and the final 2,000 on the submission of an actual business plan. So this is the first initial help that we are giving to the startups. The B-Start is the second part is called the post-business plan. So here we are looking at enterprises who already have a business plan in place. And the support is given then upon wage cost, upon employment. And there's a 25,000 euro per quarter linked to employment. So now we've moved from the business plan to the actual growing stage of the company. We also have a higher level of scheme, which is a startup finance. Now, this is not just a grant, this is in the form of a repayable advance. The assistance here, in fact, is linked to private equity, wages, working capital, tangible and intangible assets, crowdfunding, and then also a grant on an accelerator assistance. In terms of capping, the startup finance may go up to 400,000 euro and can also be increased to 800,000 in case of innovative enterprises. Now, in this within this startup, the corporation is also assisting towards working capital. And in fact, an allocation within the capping is giving either as 200,000 to a small startup undertaking, or else if it is innovative, it is increased to 400,000 euro. So in this case, assistance can also be given in terms of working capital. I will also mention again that this is a repayable advance. We have introduced a new scheme, the Kickstart Scheme, which is aimed at startups who would like to participate in accelerator programs. It is very important that whoever wants to apply for this scheme contacts Malta Enterprise first, because the accelerator programs need to be recognized by Malta Enterprise. Now, the accelerator programs are not within on our shores, but the assistance is given in terms of fees being charged by the accelerator and costs incurred during this acceleration period. For instance, travel, per diem, and so on. So we help out in the journey for the startup to accelerate its phases. We move on to the business development, which at times it's not strictly to startup companies, but it's a support measure that is awarded either in tax or in cash grants, and its assistance is widespread. As you can see, the scheme, which is governed by the de minimis regulation, can assist a company in various areas. We could help, the corporation can help in relocation costs, key personnel, for instance, lease of rental real estate, and as you can see more on screen, as in support and advisory services, relocation of tangible assets, and so on and so forth. And this is sometimes intended as a scheme, a grant, which is supported mainly after the B-Start and the startup finance in some cases. So we're looking at businesses who are expanding and transforming their business at a later stage rather than the initial phases in the journey. One of our popular schemes is actually the MicroInvest. This is because it helps out a number of companies, and it's not limited to certain specific sectors such as only technology. So the MicroInvest is wider in its sector, and it also encourages undertakings such as startups, family business, and self-employed to invest in their business. Now, the MicroInvest is not giving as a cash grant, but it is a tax credit incentive. The capping under the MicroInvest is capped at 50,000 euro over a period of 3 consecutive fiscal years, as the company can benefit from this amount over years. However, there is an increase in capping of 20,000 So there's a total of 70,000 if the undertaking is either operating in Gojo, registered as a business, or had more than 50% of the ownership attributed to female persons. So these are some of the schemes that we usually recommend the startups to go through. Then, besides startup, Malta Enterprise also supports with allocation of space, and the corporation has a business incubator specifically for startups, proposing novel or enhanced solutions to the industry. This incubator is located in Cordine, and it forms part of various offices and spaces on the industrial targeted at industrial spaces rather than office-based ideas. So in this case, we're looking at manufacturing services and game development type of companies. Within the last 20 years, the Incubation Centre has hosted several startups within sectors such as cosmetics, forensics, development of active ingredients, and so on, like 3D printing, for instance, and other services related and game development and software in that sense. The tenancy usually lasts for 3 years, and then the corporation and the key persons responsible within the Incubation Centre also helps the startups to find another location outside of the Incubation Centre. So we still follow up the startups with this assistance and also with regards to the information on the startup schemes. Lastly, there's also another thing that we have introduced recently, and maybe some of you have been already familiar with the logo and the vibrant colors of the Start in Malta website. So to consolidate our efforts in the startup community, Malta Enterprise has set up the Start in Malta dedicated space. This is a space for entrepreneurs to find all the information with regards to startups within one location. So the corporation have teamed up with various stakeholders and startups to include a list of all facilities and assistance and support being offered in Malta. So it is located in only one space. However, besides just the website, the Start in Malta team is also responsible to host the Start in Malta Festival, which also was convened only a few weeks ago. Okay, and it's also gaining popularity both in Malta and abroad. So this is in a nutshell. I'm sorry if I sped right through, but there was a lot of information. And so this is in a nutshell what we do there at Malta Enterprise, and we do assist the startups in different phases of their journey, and we love to collaborate with other stakeholders and entities, so we are open for that as well, and we are always eager to work on new assignments. So good luck on your studies. I will be forwarding the information and presentation later on. These are also our contacts, but as I said, I will be making it easier to put the information in the chat. Thank you, Dr. Bardachino, and hello to everyone.
Thank you very much, Audrey. That was speedy, certainly, but it was a very comprehensive yet condensed overview of all the different incentives that you offer to entrepreneurs at different stages of the entrepreneurial journey. So it's not just for startups, but also for those who are in the growth stages and so on and so forth. I actually have a question that I'd like to perhaps ask you to clarify. So Fabian mentioned business first, and you now mentioned Start in Malta. How are they related, or how are they different?
They are different because business first is not just focused on startups, and it is the one-stop shop assistance with regards, as Fabian said, if someone had to open a VAT number at business first, you have the actual person that can help you and guide you. There are people who work in different sectors, and they are linked with people from the tax office, the VAT office. So you have the person who are responsible there. The starting mode of information would be you'll have to speak to business first about this query. So we could just consolidate all the entities together.
I see. Thank you very much, Audrey. I'm conscious of time. I would like to move on to our next speakers. We actually have two speakers now from the Malta Council for Science and Technology, known as MCST. I will have Dr. Maria Azzopardi and Mr. Stephen Borge, who will be speaking about the local incentives and also the international incentives offered by this entity. Maria and Steve, are you here, please?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Baldacchino.
Thank you, Steve.
So I'm going to be starting, and then I'm going to hand over the microphone to my colleague, Dr. Azzopardi. So first, a little bit about MCST. MCST was founded in 1988 with the onus of informing government on policy regarding science, technology, and research. We still carry out those activities through the Policy and Strategy Unit, but we've since expanded, particularly in the remit of funding grants and research projects. I myself come from the R&I unit, so I deal with the funding of local research projects using local funding, so Maltese taxpayer funding. My colleague Maria comes from the Internationalization unit. She also deals with local funding, but then her projects have a much more international dimension. And she'll get into that later on in detail. Apart from those units, we also have the Horizon Europe unit. Horizon Europe is a large European research funding program of some 70-odd billion euros, and they help get access to those types of fundings and those kinds of calls. Going into detail about what we do in the R&I unit specifically, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping and talk about technology readiness levels. We tend to focus our grants on the quality of the idea rather than the people applying. So we do our best not to discriminate against startups and newer entities who are trying to get funding for their innovative research projects. And the TRL is a good way of trying to figure out where you are in the stage of your development of your idea. Roughly speaking, TRLs 1 through 4 are what we consider, let's say, basic research. It's sort of the process leading up to a proof of concept, something that shows that your idea can be feasible, might be able to work. TRLs 5 through 6, 7 is when you finally get a sort of minimum viable product that you could probably take to the market. And then 7 through 9 is actually commercializing that technology. Now, as of this year, we started funding all levels of TRLs. This is a relatively new sort of initiative. We started focusing on between TRL 4 and 7. We opened the earlier a program for the earlier TRLs in 2020, and this year we opened for the later stage TRLs, mostly to help get access to larger pots of funding. So we do this all through what we call Fusion. Fusion is a national portfolio which funds these TRLs. It has provided 14.5 million euros worth of funding since 2015. And year on year, we're seeing this grow. And as of next year, it will have a budget of just shy of 5 million euros. So we're getting a bit bigger every year. And it has quite a breadth of programs within it. So programs that fund the early stage research, early TRLs, all the way down through to the final stage of TRLs, and the grants vary as well. So we have grants of as little as 20,000 euros and the grants as large as 300,000 euros. And these are currently all of the programs that fit under the Fusion umbrella. So I'm going to start with the Research Excellence Program. That is the program that we introduced to address early stage research. It's a 50,000 euro grant for a 1-year project. And here we're focusing on the sort of novelty of what you're proposing and the impact that it could have on society, particularly if we're talking about entrepreneurship, the impact it would have on the market that you want to enter. We also provide grants for a feasibility assessment. So we think that this fits in quite well after the Research Excellence Program. The feasibility assessment is known as the CVP. We have a very structured approach where we have our own service providers, and these will help you assess the novelty through an IP check and the commercial feasibility. So I'm doing a market research. This isn't purely informative, but it will help you form your idea and focus exactly on the components that you need to focus on. And this will help you narrow down the end users that you need to be targeting. The CVP is a prerequisite for the largest grant we have, the Technology Development Program. That is the grant of 300,000 euros. And that takes you from the proof of concept you might have had at the RDP stage and takes you to the point that you have a minimum viable product, or is intended to take you up to that point. As a sort of alternative to the TDP, there is the TDP Lite. The TDP Lite is a bit more direct. It doesn't have the CVP as a prerequisite, and it does not have the same collaborative requirements, but it's a grant of 150,000 euros rather than 300,000 euros. And as of this year, closing actually next week, we had the go-to-market call. The go-to-market is actually two different programs. One is to help you do verification and validation activities, and one of them is to help you secure a sort of business loan to actually commercialize your technologies. We've done that in collaboration with the Malta Development Bank, and hopefully it will help you secure a large enough pot of funding for you to actually commercialize and carry you through those initial few years where profitability might be a little bit difficult. Last but not least, we also have the thematic program. The thematic program is a top-down initiative. Basically, every year we try and identify an area which could use a particular push, some help from our Maltese-based innovators to address certain market failures or needs. So for example, this year it was the smart cities. Last year, obviously because of COVID, it was the infectious diseases program, so on and so forth. Now, something that I want to mention, which might help given the early stage nature of the ideas you may have, most of our grants has a strong component of pre-financing. So hopefully that will address some cash flow issues that you may have. Last but not least, apart from Fusion, we also offer some internationalization efforts. I cannot stress the importance of having a strong network. This is maybe more relevant for some ideas than others, but internationalization is genuinely very important and can really take your ideas to the next level. So under the IPAS Plus program, we help individuals try and get either the extra training they need or the extra collaborations they need from foreign centers of excellence that may be able to take their idea to the next level. So it funds things like short-term placements, local visits from academics or researchers from foreign institutes, so on and so forth. It also, under a different option, helps you submit a proposal to Horizon Europe. So those are very large pots of funding, but might not be that relevant at this stage. So with that, I am going to hand over my microphone, so to speak, to my colleague Maria, once I stop sharing. So thank you very much.
Yeah. And can you see my screen, please?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So thank you very much, Stephen. So
My contribution towards this event today would be to give you an insight into the internationalization program. So my name is Marie and I come from the internationalization unit. The main aim of this strengthen international R&I collaboration amongst local and foreign researchers and stakeholders. And basically, this is in terms of opportunities, we try to manage programs whereby we give you the opportunity, we give opportunity to our local stakeholders to internationalize their ideas, to become part of international consortia and undertake R&I in order to address challenges that are not only local, but are also the common challenges that we are facing within a regional dimension, for instance, in the Mediterranean, or even at a European or even pan-European dimension. So in terms of programs, we have bilateral programs. We manage two bilateral programs called Sino-Malta and MCST2-BITAC. We have a number of multilateral programs, however, only Prima for the time being is launching calls. And we also have the new Horizon Europe partnerships, which are also multilateral programs. However, they are still relatively new. And MCST is managing three of them: the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, the Sustainable Blue Economy Partnership, and the Transforming Health and Care Systems Partnership. So what I will be doing is I'll go briefly through each and every one of them so as to give you more insight, especially in terms of thematic areas and the budget that we have available. And just a general overview in terms of state aid, given that these programs are open for private as well as non-private entities. In terms of state aid for private entities, you can apply under both GBER, the General Block Exemption Regulation, or even the minimis in terms of state aid routes. So first and foremost, the first bilateral that I'll be discussing is the Sino-Malta. In terms of collaboration, and at least in terms of the minimum eligible consortium, you would need a China-based partner. So you would be the local Malta-based partner, and you need a China-based partner. In terms of local consortium, you can also choose to include another local partner. So there isn't a capping of how many local partners there can be. In terms of thematic areas, this is a bottom-up call. So in terms of thematic areas, you might go into, you might have an idea under green transitions, health, or digital technologies. Once your idea can even vaguely fall under any one of these thematic areas, it is likely that it fulfills the eligibility criteria. In terms of call budget, we have 600,000 for 3 projects, at least at the moment. And for each and every project, you can ask for a total of 200,000, okay? In terms of when this call is likely to be launched, we usually launch this around May. So the next call would be in May 2023. The second bilateral that we manage is one with TÜBİTAK, with our Turkish counterparts. Once again, in terms of consortium eligibility, you would need a Turkey-based partner. And the thematic areas here are water management, sustainable farming systems, the agri-food value chain, and we are also looking to include other thematic areas, more cross-cutting thematic areas such as digital technologies. Here, the national call budget is slightly less. We have 200,000 for 2 projects, and so the maximum amount of requested funding that you can ask is for 100,000 per project. Just to mention that you can apply with more than one project per call. So that is up to you in terms of how many ideas you might have. Then there are the more ambitious multilateral calls, whereby in terms of participating states would be a higher number. For instance, starting off with the Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean area, we are 19 Mediterranean countries hailing from the north, south, and east of the Mediterranean. In terms of consortium eligibility, you would need to be at least 3 independent legal entities, with at least 1 coming from the north, so an EU member state, and at least 1 from the south or east. The thematic areas are also similar to the MCST2 BITAC, so water management, sustainable farming systems, and the agro-food value chain. Digital technologies is also a cross-cutting theme under PRIMA, so there can be a lot of possible ideas, so drones in agriculture, logistics, AI in terms of food supply chains, etc. So the sky is the limit when it comes to the two ideas. PRIMA calls are usually two-stage calls, so you would need to submit a pre-proposal. So for instance, this call is going to be launched in January, so you would need to submit a pre-proposal by February, March. And then you would know of the outcome roughly around May, June, and you would need to submit the full proposal in September, and you would know of the outcome of the call by December 2023. The national call budget for this call is of 500,000, and you can ask for the entire 500,000 per project, okay? Next, so we have the Horizon Europe partnerships. These are relatively new partnerships. They've started in 2021. However, we've only launched them as of this year. In fact, only the clean energy transition has been launched last September, and the deadline is in fact next week. And the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, in terms of consortium eligibility, also requires 3 independent legal entities from the different participating states. And the national call budget, once again, is 500,000. In terms of thematic areas, here we are looking into renewable energies, heating and cooling, integrated energy systems, so renewable energies in the built environment. So there are a lot of topics that you can avail yourself of. And the call budget is of 500,000 euros. Then we have 2 other Horizon Europe partnerships, and these are going to be launched roughly in mid-January of 2023. These are the Transforming Health and Care Systems Partnership and the Sustainable Blue Economic Partnership. However, in terms of more information, we will be providing this information on our social media as well as on the MCST website, because obviously we are still finalizing these partnerships on a consortium level. The national call budget will be the same of 500,000 per call, that is definite. Just before I conclude, I would like to make you aware of this Plumtree Resource. This database is managed by the Internationalization unit, whereby it serves as a platform for research and innovation in the Mediterranean. And it helps you to keep abreast with latest news and events, funding and work opportunities in R&I. And it also facilitates networking. So if you would like to find partners, you can always come to us as national contact points, so that we, through our own networks, our own network of national contact points, we can help you with finding the international partners. But then you can also use the partner search facility page or the matchmaking tool to find partners who are interested in the same calls. If also in terms of your startup, you would want to promote any of, for instance, employment, or you are looking for opportunities, etc., you can also submit information to us, and we can share it on this platform. So lastly, I would like to encourage you to come to follow our social media, LinkedIn, Facebook. We also have a newsletter. So I think the best advice would be to reach out, to contact us should you have any ideas, so that we can help you out, and then we can relay you to the relevant call manager based on your needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Maria, for a very detailed presentation. There is a lot of information to take in, many different opportunities, many different grants. So I don't know if there are any questions from the audience right now, but my feeling is that people need to digest all of this information and then perhaps contact you at a later stage. Okay, so no questions. Stephen and Maria, thank you very much for your time once again. Have a lovely evening. And I would now like to introduce our next speaker, who is Dr. Martez Portelli. Dr. Portelli is the CEO of the Malta Chamber of Commerce, Enterprise and Industry. So we earlier, Martez, I'm not sure if you were online yet, we had Fabian D'Amicoli from the Malta Chamber of SMEs. So now it will be interesting to hear what you have to say about the Malta Chamber of Commerce. Martes, are you here?
Yes, sure enough. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Professor Baldacchino. Thank you also for giving us the opportunity to communicate with the future entrepreneurs. I've prepared a short presentation, which maybe I can also share, if you don't mind. So basically, I'll start off with a quick overview of the chamber. The Malta Chamber is housed in Valletta, and it is important to note that the Malta Chamber of Commerce is the only official entity appointed to represent employer bodies, which is enshrined particularly in the commercial law. So commercial law specifically states that there must be the Malta Chamber of Commerce, Enterprise and Industry, and that it actually needs to operate from the building that we are currently operating in Valletta. What maybe you might be asking, but there are multiple chambers, there are multiple employer bodies in Malta. Yes, you are right on that, but we all come out of different laws. So the Malta Chamber of Commerce is established in the Commercial Code. The other employer bodies would be promulgated under various laws, under trade union law, under voluntary organization law, etc. From our end, we represent businesses of all sizes. So we represent the self-employed, the small, the micros, the medium, and even the large companies. Some interesting history about the Malta Chamber. We are the oldest institution representing businesses in Malta. We started way back in 1848, and in fact next year we will be celebrating our 175th anniversary. Some history about the Malta Chamber. The Malta Chamber is designed by the renowned Maltese architect Giovanni Bonavia, and what is important to note that it has a neoclassical design, which at the time that it was built was new to Valletta. At the time, Valletta was being designed with Mannerist and Baroque architecture. So the architect, Giovanni Bonavia, at that point in time decided to take a different angle, and then others followed suit. What is also interesting to note about the Malta Chamber is that throughout its history, so starting from 1848 to date, the biggest majority of its presidents were bankers. So they always had a financial background. And one last point of history, which is very important to note, that the Malta Chamber houses the biggest portrait gallery that we have in Malta. And the portraits that we have hung, some of which you can see, the portraits belong to our past presidents. There is the idea that when a past president passes away, the family contributes a portrait to the Malta Chamber, and it is hung within our main room. The portraits are done by well-renowned artists. So apart from Giorgio Bonavia himself, we have portraits which are actually done by Giuseppe Cali, by Edward Caruana Dingley, and by other renowned architects. So the Malta Chamber, why are we here, and what do we represent? So obviously, like other employer bodies, we are here to represent Malta's business community, and we also look forward to make sure that we grow and engage all the business community when it comes to shaping Malta's future. And this is why I also believe that entities like ours and other employer bodies have an important role to play when it comes to policy formulation in Malta. History also shows that most of the policy that is effectively taken up is actually policy that is embraced by the business community, and also a policy that would be embraced by other NGOs. Why would one feel the need to be part of the Malta Chamber. So because of the fact that we have been established since 1848, 175 years basically, it makes us the biggest and also the widest ranging business conglomerate. So as a Chamber of Commerce, we cannot elect and choose which business cohort to represent. We are here to represent all the business community, all the business sectors, or the different niches. And this in turn also gives us a strong voice, particularly when it comes to policy formulation. So if you were to ask me, what is the main role of the Malta Chamber? The main role of the Malta Chamber is to design policy, discuss that policy, promote it, and obviously then implement it. We also have a very strong network, not only locally, but even at an international level. And I will shortly be telling you how we do our network. In tandem with the fact that in terms of numbers, we are by far the biggest business conglomerate, even if we were to look at it from two very important aspects. So if we were to look at it in terms of the economical aspect, the Malta Chamber represents 75% of industry export. And when it comes to private sector employment, the Malta Chamber also represents, today we are at a region of 78%. So all these factors teamed up together, the fact that we are the oldest, the fact that we represent a good chunk of the industry export, even the percentage in terms of private sector employment, also the fact that we represent all businesses, not by choice, but even through the law itself, gives us a very strong voice. Now, how do we operate? I felt that I had to share with you how we operate internally, because probably one of the questions that you are asking yourself is how do they manage to come up with policy which targets all the different businesses that we have operating in Malta. So we have our council and our board of management, which are elected once every 2 years. And the idea behind having a frequent election is to make sure that the Malta Chamber keeps its representation and its representative database fresh. From then on, whoever becomes a member of the Malta Chamber has to decide under which economic group it falls. So here you will see 3 economic groups. One of the economic groups focuses on manufacturing and the larger industries. The other group focuses on importers, distributors, and retailers. And the third would be focusing on service provision. Now, when we're talking about service provision, this is by far the widest ranging. So you have from waste collectors, literally up to the financial services industry that fall under this cohort. At the level of economic group, the issues are discussed more at a macro level. And more often than not, the 3 committees meet with one another to share ideas. For example, one of the most pertinent issues being discussed currently at the economic group level is the issues that we are facing with shipping, with logistics, with the fact that Malta is very small, and apart from being small, it is very insular. So these are issues that are common to all business. Therefore, they are discussed at economic group level and jointly together. Now, under each economic group, the members of the specific economic groups are then subdivided into business sections. The business sections represent different business interests. So at that level, the discussion focuses more on the micro nitty-gritties, the micro issues of that specific business section. And I'll take you quickly on to the next slide. Here you can get an idea of some of the business sections that we have actually set up. And the chamber is very dynamic. So once every 6 months, we look at our database. And once we realize that we have a solid group of niches, of sectors, which are well represented within the economic group, we proceed to create a business section. For instance, the latest 2 were the retail business section and the furniture manufacturing. So apart from being represented at economic group level, the business sections are again given another voice where they can discuss the micro issues pertinent to the sector. We then have our thematic committees, and our thematic committees are based on 5 main pillars. The first pillar, and these are the pillars on which we build all our policy. So every policy that comes out of the Malta Chamber has to focus on these 5 pillars. It needs to actually tick the box for these 5 pillars. And even when we are replying back with feedback to public consultations. So first and foremost, we keep in mind economic growth and resilience. And in turn, economic growth and resilience is supported by another 4 policy pillars. So we have sustainability, which we give a lot of importance, digitalization, which basically is the survival. We all need to digitalize our processes in order to ensure that we remain profitable, competitive, that we are client-oriented, etc. The pillar of human capital, this is a very important pillar because no matter how good your product is or your service is, unless you have the proper people working with you, it's useless. In fact, if I were to share with you one point, at the moment, we have a number of companies with the potential to grow, which have the ability to grow, both in terms of financial stability and even in terms of ideas and innovation. But because they are finding it difficult to recruit the proper human capital, particularly when it comes to skills and expertise, their growth is being inhibited. So this is why we consider human capital as one of the main areas which we need to push and promote. And last but not least, we have governance. And when we're speaking about governance, we're talking both about public governance, but also corporate governance, including governance when it comes to issues that deal with the general public. For example, under the pillar of government, you will see pensions, and probably you're asking yourself, but why does the Malta Chamber go into the pensions issue? It's a social issue. It's not an economic issue. We believe that we need to address these issues because ultimately it will have an effect on the quality, the well-being of the individual, and ultimately the well-being of the country at large. The bullet points that you're seeing under the pillars reflect committees as well. So we have a think tank which is preparing a strategy for 2050. The latest committee under economic growth is an ESG committee, whereby we are showing our businesses what they need to be implementing, what type of consultants they need to get on board, what they need to do in terms of sustainability, etc. If you look at sustainability, you can see that we are working very hard on circular economy, on having sustainable mobility, and even in terms of energy and energy conservation. On top of all that, then we have a number of working groups which are called as we go along. For example, one of our most recent working groups focuses purely on one aspect. It focuses purely on the issue of third country nationals, how we can attract the better third country nationals and how we can facilitate their entry into Malta. So as you can see, the committees are very diverse. Some tackle issues at a micro level, some tackle issues at a macro level. Then we have the thematic committees, which are horizontal, and the working groups, which are working groups dealing with specific subject matters. Every committee is assigned a policy executive, and the policy executive would not only be responsible for the agenda and the minute taking, but also to coordinate the lobbying required, the research required, the paper compilation, etc. And again, we do not assign any policy executive to any committee, but we take into consideration their expertise. For example, Our latest recruit is an engineer. He is specialized in decarbonization and net zero. So obviously we have assigned to him all the committees that focus on sustainability, as well as all the public consultations focusing on the subject. Business sections, we've gone through them quickly. Our partnerships are very important for us because obviously they help the Malta Chamber to give a better service to the business community. So the three on the left-hand side, Trade Malta, TechMT, and Education Malta, are public-private partnerships on a 50-50 ratio with the government of Malta and the Malta Chamber. Trade Malta is the internationalization arm of the Malta Chamber, basically Trade Malta. And I would like to literally thank all the employees at our three public-private partnerships for the sterling job that they do. Trade Malta focuses on internationalization of selected countries. So it allows expertise in those specific areas. The areas that wouldn't be covered by Trade Malta are then covered internally through the Malta Chamber. TechMT, again, focuses on internationalization, but internationalization for the tech industry. Education Malta, as the name itself suggests, focuses on the educational aspect. The Malta Business Bureau, it is our Brussels arm, where we have an office in Brussels as well, and our foot soldier in Brussels makes sure that he keeps us up to date with the regulation that would be in the pipeline, the discussions going on. So even though we are not always, as a country, because of our size, able to influence policy at EU level, though there have been times where we have successfully managed, but being given a heads up well in advance of the entry into force of regulation gives us the advantage that we are able to reach out to our businesses, prepare them in advance what they need to do. For example, at the moment, there are a number of laws, regulations, draft regulations in terms of digitalization being discussed at EU level. We are kept well versed on them. So from now, we're already speaking with our business community to make sure that any investment they're doing in their tech will actually reflect what in the coming months and immediate years we will be expecting from the Commission. There is also Enterprise Europe Network, which is a consortium that we're in together with Malta Enterprise, where we help companies to find counterparts with whom they can do business, not only within Europe itself, but on an international basis. Last but not least, we have a number of memoranda of understanding which we sign with other entities and other organizations, such as Camra tal-Periti, such as the Malta Chamber of Advocates, the Malta Institute of Accountants, the Malta Construction Managers. And the idea is that rather than the Malta Chamber having to be an expert in every single subject, which truly speaking, it's impossible to do, the Malta Chamber focuses on its role in terms of policy formulation and the lobbying aspect, whereas we would be getting the technical detail directly from associations which would be specialized in that particular area. So for example, we've just signed up our MOU with the Malta Insurance Association. You may ask, so how are you working together? The Malta Insurance Association is providing us with the technical knowledge on the legal framework of insurance, what needs to be done to better that framework, what also needs to be done to help industry to grow. We would then analyze it from the holistic perspective, from the bird's eye view perspective. So not only from the insurer's point of view, but from the entire business's point of view. And obviously then we propose the way forward. International fora, we are present in 2 fora which are focused at European Union level, Business Europe and Eurochamber, and we also form part of the International Chamber of Commerce. Our sponsors support us primarily, not in terms of financial support, but they also support us a lot when it comes to knowledge, know-how, information gathering, particularly even when it comes to the analysis of data that we would have gathered. So definitely, without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to give the good service that we currently give to the business community at large. Representation on boards. This is also a very important element of it, where the Malta Chamber is represented on a number of government boards, and that allows this, this discussion, this ongoing communication between the policymaker and the business community. And I believe that that is something which is very, very positive. And from my end, that's it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Portelli. All right, now we can see Klaus.
Yes, I have decided not to share a presentation because we have very little time and I want to stay focused on what it is Trade Malta does. And most presentations are very long and it will take too long and we get off track. So Trade Malta, as Matthias mentioned, is a public-private partnership. 51% government, 49% Chamber of Commerce. We came into existence in 2017. Before then, trade promotion or export promotion, if you like, was under the remit of Malta Enterprise. But it was felt that it was worthwhile to have an entity that focused solely on this. We are a very small team. We are 5.5 people. So I'm sure the half person wouldn't like me calling a half, but it's part-time, of course. And made probably a bit in the image of Finance Malta, if you know that. A small team dedicated to a very specific purpose. Now, the purpose that we are dedicated to is to help Malta-based companies internationalize. And if in all of these words and presentations, and you getting tired, if you remember nothing else, remember this: Trade Malta is here to help Malta-based companies internationalize. And that's also wonderfully clear for us, because that means that we know what it is that we have to do. Now, you can divide what we do into two types of assistance: financial assistance and non-financial assistance. And everybody's mostly interested in the financial assistance, so I always start with the non-financial, so I don't lose them. Non-financial assistance, what we do is we do a number of seminars, for example. We hold seminars, we hold webinars. We have one coming up at the Chamber of Commerce on the UAE here towards the end of the month. And during COVID, of course, we had a lot of webinars instead of seminars. And we organize other events. We also have a training program called Global Growth, Go Global, sorry. And Go Global is a university accredited course. It runs in the evening. It could be relevant to some of the people who are sitting here, because you could learn a thing or two about internationalization. It runs for 10 sessions in the evenings. We do it every year. There's a small fee, and I think there's even a possibility of a refund. And then we do Malta International Business Awards, which we have not done in the past 2 years because of COVID. We do it every other year, and it's a competition for exporters. You have newcomers, you have large exporters, you have medium, and so on. And we have a very thorough evaluation of the applicants, and then we choose winners and have a big do. Then on our website, there are a number of resources that are relevant for the exporters. We have, for example, access to a Compass, which is kind of a yellow pages, but internationally of companies. We have something called Statista, where we also have access to things that you would otherwise normally have to pay for. We have various sector reports, various country reports. The webinars we mentioned are uploaded there. We have a series of videos, which is training on internationalization, and we have some training courses also. So there are a number of resources that are available there on our website, and that is available for anybody to use. But you would need to log into our website in order to see everything, and also to be informed about what it is we do and when there's something new. Now, I said there were two parts. The other part is the financial assistance. So financial assistance, we have something called the guidelines for the International Trade Promotion Scheme, which is found on our website. And these guidelines govern all of the programs. So if you need to, after I've been talking, to go in and understand better about one of the schemes, that is where you need to go. On our website, on each of the programs, you will find the guidelines at the bottom. That is our rule book. In general, at a general level, you can say that our assistance, our financial assistance, is co-financing. That means you apply with us, we give you an incentive entitlement certificate, you go and spend the money, and then you come back and you claim once you have the invoices and proof of payment, and we can give you back 50% of eligible expenses to eligible companies. And eligible companies, that means we do not support every single company in Malta. I mentioned Finance Malta before, so there, for example, we do not support financial services because they do that. We do not support tourism because there's the Malta Tourism Authority. And in general, we try to support companies whose internationalization will contribute to value-added economic activity in Malta. So we do not support, for example, traders who are importers and retailers and so on. There has to be some perspective in value-added economic activity if you grow. Now, the programs, we currently have 5 programs open. They're very much targeted toward internationalization. And I think compared to some of the other presentations I've heard here tonight, ours is for the more mature company. Doesn't mean it's not for a startup, but it's only for companies that have come so far as to have some account, some idea about how they want to internationalize. So if you're still at the stage of having an idea and maybe innovation, probably MCST or Malta Enterprise is the place to go. But once you're there, you're ready to go international, then you should look at Trade Malta's services. We have currently 5 programs open. One is exhibiting in trade fairs. You apply, you go to a trade fair, you come back, you send in a claim, and you get up to 30,000 euros in refund. And by the way, our funding is also under the de minimis rules. And I think, Leonie, if you could find some way at time, this should be clarified, because a lot of presenters have mentioned de minimis. And the overall capping of 200,000 over 3 years, of course, applies to any company, and that's important to understand. But exhibiting in trade fairs, I'm going back to our 5 programs that are open. Business missions, that is when we organize a mission. For example, we have one going to Ghana here in January. Business missions, companies that participate in our business missions will get a refund on their flight and a per diem per day they are abroad. Then we have a program called Global Growth, where you can get refunds for traveling, even traveling to visit trade fairs, traveling to visit clients, development of marketing materials, a business partner in the target countries. So you can get assistance for a host of things, but you apply once for the entire year, and then you can claim multiple times during the year. And this program is currently open for applications for 2023, and they close on the 5th of December. So if this is at all relevant to you, you should hurry up and have a look at our website, see this program called Global Growth, and possibly apply. Then we have another one called Market Research. You can also get refund from Market Research under Global Growth, but if you missed the boat on Global Growth and you want to buy a Market Research report, there's the possibility of applying with Trade Malta and get a refund of 50%. And finally, we have digital marketing, which is online advertising. The company, the applicant, has to apply it, has to do the advertising itself on, for example, Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and then they can claim back refunds of 50%. Our website, because now it's important you pay attention since I don't have a presentation, is called trademalta.org, www.trademalta.org. And of course, everything I have said and a lot more is available on that site. We're here to help. Please do not hesitate to get in touch if you have any questions at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Klaus. If you could perhaps type the URL and your contact details into the chat box, that would be very helpful for all our listeners.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely
Thank you.
evening, Klaus. I'd like to introduce Mr. Milan Haluska, who is the chairman of CSR Malta Association, and also involved in the Social Entrepreneurs Association of Malta, also known as SEAM, which is actually the main association that he will be discussing, to the best of my knowledge. So, Milan, are you here?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
My internet is a little bit unstable right now. I don't know if this is the case for other people too, but I will go on. Yes, I am one of the members of executive committee of SEAM, Social Enterprise Association Malta. It's an association that is helping social enterprises and social entrepreneurs. Since March this year, there is a law on books about social entrepreneurship that is supposed to govern the sector. Unfortunately, we are still waiting for the regulator to be established according to this law. So the law is on books, but it's not functional yet. Many companies here, either NGOs or private companies or co-ops, are actually doing social enterprise type of work, but they do it under different legal entities and under different laws. This is a little bit unfortunate, and we are in process of forming some sort of like a lobby group to push for these for these elements to take place, like the regulator. Beside that, we organize various network meetings and also preparing a course, self-learned course that would provide, that would prepare entrepreneurs, either existing or future entrepreneurs, to the area of social enterprise. And I very much suggest to keep abreast to our organization and see how whole field will be developing here in Malta. I think this is, in a nutshell of what I wanted to say. Our association is about 2 years old, and again, beside networking, getting together and going through some Erasmus projects, we are ready to consult, we are ready to assist, but unfortunately, social enterprise field as such is still handicapped by not having this law fully in force. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much for your intervention, Milan. It's nice to have somebody representing social enterprises here at this event. As you're saying, there is still a lot of work to be done on a national level, but it's good that there is your association that supports social entrepreneurs. I know that another one of your members is here participating in today's session. I saw Patricia and the list of participants, and I know quite a few of your members as well, and you're doing really good job, really good work. So thank you very much. So our next speaker is Mr. John Malia, who is the president of the Malta Cooperative Foundation. Federation, sorry, I keep getting the name wrong. Mr. Malia, thank you for joining us. Over to you.
Right. Good evening, Dr. Baldacchino. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to share a presentation with you, so hopefully you'll be able to see that. Is everybody seeing the presentation okay? Perfect. Okay. So basically, I would like to introduce to you the Malta Cooperative Federation. I'm the president of this federation, but my full-time job is I work in a cooperative. I am a partner in a cooperative, and this is our 25th year of our operations. So we're celebrating the next 25. I basically just wanted to share with you some aspects, first of all, because a lot of people do not really realize what a cooperative is and whether a cooperative can be a good option. And basically, this is why the presentation is, in fact, entitled The Viable Work Option. And one of the things that is a mantra to us all is this African proverb that basically goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And perhaps this is the main ethos of a cooperative. The word cooperative follows the word cooperation, and the idea is people coming together to cooperate for their own interest and for the interests of others as well. In fact, what I wanted to do is, first of all, dismiss the idea that co-ops are organizations, are businesses that are on the periphery of business. And these numbers will probably help you discover something different. 12% of the world's population is a member of a cooperative. Worker cooperatives employ 20% more workers than multinationals combined. So their contribution to employment is substantial. Around the world, there are 3 million cooperative businesses, and the largest 300 cooperatives make 2.1 thousand billion turnover annually. So we're talking about huge numbers. But a lot of people sometimes ask, but okay, so what is a cooperative and what is the basic difference between a cooperative and other forms of businesses? Cooperative is a voluntary and democratic organization where a number of entrepreneurs come together to join and conduct social or business activity in which each member has an equal say in the control and conduct of the enterprise. Now, this is perhaps the most basic difference between a cooperative and a company. In a company, you have a situation where the business is investor-centered. So basically, if we this evening decide to form a company and I have 50% plus one of the shares, basically, what I say goes. So that's the idea behind a company. So it is very investor-oriented. In the case of a cooperative, we talk about the principle of one person, one vote. So at the end of the day, it is not a question of how much money you have, but it is more based on the person. I think it is also pertinent to point out that cooperatives are not just businesses that you will just register and start operating. Cooperatives around the world have established 7 basic principles that are common basically throughout the world. And basically, I shall be sharing with you some of these principles, which include, for example, democratic member control. I just talked about that. One of them is, for example, member economic participation. So the members themselves become the economic participators in that organization, which means that they partake of the surpluses that cooperative makes. So they are direct recipients of the work they do, basically. One of the most important principles of cooperatives is concern for community. Whereas in companies, we all normally talk about CSR. So it's something that normally companies do once in a while. Cooperatives are part of the community, and their CSR is 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Okay, so that is in a nutshell some of the principles that are shared. Basically, whether you're in Malta or in Malawi, the same principles are shared between every cooperative throughout the world. These 7 cooperative principles rest on pillars that I think are very important and are an essential part of the cooperative's DNA. So we talk about democracy, we talk about participation, self-help, equality, solidarity, and above all, the ethical values of honesty, openness, social responsibility, and caring for others. So yes, cooperatives are businesses, but they are ethical businesses. So you will not find cooperatives in, for example, businesses that harm the environment, or cooperatives that do not pay their workers a fair wage. So that is one of the most essential aspects of a cooperative. Some big names in the business world are cooperatives, but sometimes we are not really aware of these brands. I shall be sharing a few of these brands that perhaps we would not know that they are cooperatives, but in fact they are. Barcelona Football Club, one of the largest clubs in the world, is cooperative, owned by 168,000 supporters. Sunkist is a big group of American citrus growers who basically sell their wares and process their fruit. The largest media organization in the world, Associated Press, is a cooperative of different media organizations. Cooperative Insurance Service is the largest insurance provider in the UK. Rabobank is one of the largest European banks, and it is also owned by its depositors. If you go to neighboring Italy, you will find not less than 275 cooperative banks that are owned by their own depositors. And basically the list goes on, so I will not go and trouble you into different examples, but I think this goes to prove that cooperatives can be present in any sector of the economy. Not only that, but they are very socially viable. So that is one aspect that I think is important to note. In fact, the issue, the last speaker was talking about the aspect of social enterprises, and there are a huge amount of social enterprises that are cooperative. Luckily, although the local legislation is still not yet in force in terms of social enterprises, luckily we can form social cooperatives, and the basic difference between a commercial cooperative, which still has a social ethos, and a social cooperative is that in a normal cooperative, at the end of the year, the members partake of the surplus. Whereas in a social cooperative, that surplus is not taken by its members, but is reinvested for social purposes. Just going perhaps close to home, this is the Malta Cooperative Federation. Basically, we have been set up since 2012, and we are home to various cooperatives in different sectors of society, ranging from sports tourism to media to consultancy. We've got also a restoration cooperative, cooperatives in culture, social cooperatives, cooperatives in transport. So there is a lot of, and the biggest cooperative sector is the maritime industry. In fact, our biggest, the biggest cooperative in Malta is a cooperative owned by 16 master mariners who form part of the Malta Maritime Pilots Cooperative. They have become so successful, they have now invested in a second cooperative that basically mans Maritime NT, which is a maritime school, which is not just providing education, maritime education locally, but also internationally. What does the Malta Cooperative Federation do? First of all, it brings together existing cooperatives. We federate, we try to work together, and we also offer free assistance in new cooperative startups. So the idea is that, people who have ideas, they want to come together, they form a team, they come to us, and we help them free of charge to set up cooperatives. Our only condition would be membership in the federation once they are registered. We also do a lot of outreach for increased awareness, and outreach is very, very important because in Malta, unfortunately, awareness on the cooperative option of business is still a little bit lacking backward. We also fund a lot of assistance to operating cooperatives, and we also make use of our international memberships so that cooperatives, members of the federation, can not just learn from other members, other cooperative members outside Malta, but they can also look to work together with them and increase their business. A final aspect of what I wanted to talk to you about is how to start a cooperative. So the first thing is you have a business idea, you have a dream, get a team together. The minimum amount of people to form a cooperative is 5. So you just have to form 5 people. Right now we're lobbying government to decrease that to 3. As soon as you have that, you can basically contact the Malta Cooperative Federation. We have our own expert people who have been in the cooperative world now for a lot of years. And basically the first thing we do is we create a business plan. As soon as we create that business plan, then we write the rules. And that obviously is the statute of the cooperative. As soon as we have those 2, we are in a position to register that cooperative with the Cooperatives Board, which is the regulator, the government regulator for cooperatives. Here we also offer a lot of assistance so that the applicant will do that registering first time right. And then basically we launch. However, we also, as I was saying a few moments ago, we also provide a lot of assistance throughout a cooperative's life, basically, in order to increase success for cooperatives. My last slide is something that a lot of people think that, you know, the big fish always eats the small one. In cooperatives, we normally use a different approach. We normally use an approach that, you know, if the small fish join together, they can become very big, and they can become very empowered and can do a lot of good for them economically, socially, and culturally. So this was a very, very short presentation on the Federation and on co-ops. I would suggest that you can go onto the Federation's website, mcf.coop, as well as on our Facebook and Instagram pages, where we basically post almost every day on different exciting stories, both locally and abroad. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, John, for a very interesting presentation. It's really nice to see that the cooperatives model is still alive and well. I remember many, many years ago, there were the scoops projects in schools. So kids growing up knew what cooperatives were and the benefits of co-ops and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, to the best of my knowledge, that
was discontinued. You're
discontinued, and it was never picked up again. Quite like a number of other initiatives that I won't go into because I would be off topic completely. I also like your last slide, strength in numbers, as they say, right? And now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Giselle Borge-Olivier, who actually wears many hats. I know Giselle from different places, different organizations, including the Junior Chamber International. But today she will be talking to us primarily about ZAR crowdfunding platform. She may also say a few words about the FPEI Foundation for the Promotion of Entrepreneurial Initiatives.
Hi, good evening, Leonie. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, Leonie, you are right. I do wear several hats, but this evening it is all about ZAR and the crowdfunding platform that we offer to pretty much anybody, whether you're an individual, a startup enterprise, a voluntary organization. Crowdfunding can apply to so many people. So crowdfunding, what does ZAR offer? ZAR offers 2 types of crowdfunding. There is reward-based and there is donation-based. Donation-based is your typical fundraising activity, very often used for charities, voluntary organizations. It's a digital way of raising money instead of effectively going around with a tin can. People will donate because they believe in the cause. It could be, research, medical research, for example, helping an animal charity, your typical fundraising. Reward-based is slightly different, perhaps a bit more interesting as well, especially if you're an entrepreneur or a startup. If you require an injection of funds for your project, here we're not talking the big money, we're not talking the hundreds of thousands of euros, we're talking a couple of thousands of euros that you might need to purchase merchandise, to set up your website, just to get you off the ground. This is where crowdfunding can really help you. Why is it called reward-based? Because you need to reward your backers. The difference between reward-based crowdfunding and equity or lending is that the reward cannot be financial and it cannot be a share in the company. So you might be saying, okay, what am I going to give them? It could be the service that you're going to be providing or the product. It could be something as simple as a thank you email or a thank you on social media. If, for example, the example I always use, so some people here might have heard it before, if you're a theatre setting up a play, okay, offer people a ticket, offer them 2 tickets, backstage pass, a signed copy of the program. The rewards can be anything that you want them to be, ideally obviously associated with the project, because people would want something that links to the project. But in reality, it's where your imagination takes you. We had a campaign a few years ago now, well, a couple of years ago, related to a local football club, where the reward was that all the backers got their name on a plaque that you can actually go and see in the football club. So even something like that, people like validation, they like seeing their name literally on a board, because it gives them a sense of purpose, a sense of propriety as well. So yes, with reward-based crowdfunding, what you need to think about is, well, obviously your project, what is it that you're going to be crowdfunding for? What rewards are you going to be offering? How much do you need to actually raise? As I said before, with reward-based crowdfunding, we're usually talking an average of around 5,000 euro. This is not a local average, this is actually a European average of how much is raised through reward-based crowdfunding. It doesn't mean you cannot raise more money. We have had projects that have raised up to 30,000 euro, but obviously we have to talk law of averages here. Now, one thing that ZAR does that other platforms might not do is we do not curb the amount that you can raise, meaning that once you have reached your 100%, the campaign does not stop if there is still time allocated to it. So you can raise 110%, 120%, 200%. You can double the amount that you actually intended to raise, because the campaign will only end on the date that you set it to end. There are other platforms that will actually stop your campaign once you've reached 100% target. We don't do that. We want to encourage people to donate. We want to see people, project owners, raise as much capital as they can. So once, well, basically a campaign usually runs for approximately 4 to 6 weeks. Reason for this is that if it runs for much longer, it tends to lose its momentum. So those 4 to 6 weeks are where it is literally go, go, go, all the campaign, all the promotion, all the marketing. It's where you give it your all. So timing is also very important when you come to plan your campaign. Keep in mind things like Christmas, Valentine's Day, Easter. Are they going to help your campaign or are they going to hinder it? In some cases, campaigning around Christmas time might help. In others, you have to remember that Christmas is a time when people obviously have a lot of expenses. So are they going to be willing to actually pledge towards your campaign? Another thing is obviously seasonality. If you have a campaign for scarves, don't run your campaign in August. You know, a bit of common sense there, I suppose. But these are things that we always like to point out. So if you are interested in obviously running a campaign, you can always contact ZAR. We are here to provide support and guidance. It is part of the ZAR package. You will get a one-on-one meeting to discuss your campaign, to see its suitability and its feasibility. You will get support throughout your campaign and even after the campaign. Throughout the campaign, obviously, the money is held by ZAR, and once the campaign is over, we release it to you within about a week. Again, there are platforms that will hold on to your money. We don't do that. The money ultimately is yours. It is not ours to keep. We need that week, obviously, to do the accounting, but we always basically transfer the money within a very short space of time. So in terms of transferring the money, all you'll need is a local bank account, and it's a very basic bank transfer. Now, people usually go, okay, but what's in it for you? What does ZAR get from this? Obviously, we do need to support the platform. So all ZAR charges is a success fee of 5%. And with this, as I mentioned, you get the full support, you get technical support, you get the use of the platform, and you will also receive a press release that is distributed to local media, and that is written by a third-party PR agency. And I say that this is a success fee because if you are going to launch a reward-based crowdfunding campaign, okay, slight caveat here, you will need to reach your 100% goal in order to take the money. If you don't reach the goal, then we will need to discuss what happens to the money in terms of the rewards. There are cases where, yes, we can still transfer the money as long as you can provide the rewards. There are cases where the money has gone back to the backers. If the money goes back to the backers, ZAR does not take any fee, which is why it is a success fee. The only other charge that is incurred by the project owner is the charge of the payment gateways. It is basically a charge, we take nothing from it. We offer two payment gateways. There is PayPal and there is Stripe. They both obviously take international credit cards, and they have the fees that are basically passed on. So in a nutshell, when you come to think about your amount, add 10% onto it so that you can take the full amount that you need, and then this 10% is just withheld to cover any charges. We say 10% just because it's easy to calculate. It's usually less, it's usually around 8 to 9%, but leave that in our hands and we'll do all the calculations at the end of the campaign. I think I've probably said all I need to say, and I think I've run out of time as well.
Yes, but yeah, that great presentation, great tip there at the end as well, Giselle. Actually, I'm curious, I have a very quick question. What if you run out of time and you haven't raised 100%? Can you extend the time?
Yes, campaigns can be extended. We don't extend past 90 days for the reason I mentioned, that then it just runs out of momentum. What we usually do is we'll have a chat again if we see that the campaign is running out of time. And
I suppose it also depends on how far off from the target, you know, what the trends are looking like.
Exactly, that is exactly it, you know, and then we would advise on whether to extend or whether to just, you know, call it a day and potentially run it again in 6 months' time. That's another thing. You can run as many crowdfunding campaigns as you like. Obviously not at the same time because you'll be competing with yourself, but you can have a crowdfunding campaign every year if you like. There's no limits on that.
So it can also be a learning process, how to do it better.
Absolutely. Yes,
Great.
definitely.
Giselle, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for your time. I know that there are some really interesting examples of crowdfunding campaigns on your website. So if I can ask you, as I asked the other speakers, to please type the URL and also your contact details into the chat box. Have a lovely evening, Giselle. And now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Gordon Theobald, who is the founder and director of Business Labs, which is, well, a privately owned co-working space that offers co-working spaces and a number of services to startups and businesses. Gordon, are you here?
Yes, yes. This is my first time being part of this discussion, although my colleague did participate before. He was part of the entrepreneurship course as well at university. So I have to start off by saying that we are a private commercial entity. Okay, I've listened through, not all, but a number of discussions here. Very interesting indeed, and it is very important, and it shows how important it is for us, or private industry as well, to be part of this discussion. We often discuss and speak about an ecosystem that is very important, and that we've struggled and strived to be part of from day one. To give you a bit of background, by the way, I do have a presentation as well, but I am opting, like Giselle, not to put it up. I'll put some slides up throughout our discussion. And I'll give you a bit of background, because our background, it comes from a business advisory background. We also, for 25 years, this is what we did. We still do it. And at some stage, we're also investors in both personally and the company itself in other ventures. These ventures, with its pains and its positives, like always. Some we shed off, some we sold off, some, and this is all part of entrepreneurship and the journey. So where we feel we contribute in this ecosystem is the actual journey, right? Because we've lived it, we've tasted it, and we've done it. Along the way, what we do, other than the co-working space, and I'll get into that in more detail. We specialize in market research, business planning, and applications for funding. So this is what we do. Business Labs was an idea that was created 6 years ago. And the scope is to have a tangible space where people can come by the hour, by the half hour, by any kind of arrangement that they want. The idea is that we've moved on also, thanks to COVID as well, to a totally flexible arrangement in terms of workspace, right? So whilst we struggled in a way in the past, in the early 3 years of the operation, to actually have people, mostly Maltese people, engage with the idea of working in shared spaces, we now see that there is more scope. People are ready to explore more. They are ready to share time between home and work. However, what we've seen is that there is more and more interest to be part of something bigger, and this is what we have been trying to achieve through the past years. So when one has to speak about a co-working space, there is a very important aspect to it. That is making sure, that there is, that everybody is comfortable, even though they come from different backgrounds. What is great about a co-working space is that no matter how big or small you are, there are other people around you that have possibly more experience in a particular area, or more experience or tangible experience in a particular area or expertise. So what we've seen is that our community is growing. We are also very keen to help out companies that are in our spaces, and we do this not simply because we definitely want this to be financially feasible and sustainable, without a doubt, right? But it is not only the only motivation, because as the previous example that was given by one of the presenters, the strength of the community is bigger than is definitely larger than the individual, and I totally appreciate that concept, and it works, right? So what we try to do here, besides obviously the normal advisory or the normal maintenance and management of the space, right, is to try and get people together as much as possible. I'm aware that a number of you have already been in our spaces a number of times. We try to organize as many workshops, as many activities as we can to bring people together. And we would like to see more of this throughout all the structures that there are locally. I feel that sometimes there is a bit of resistance, or we tend to work a bit in silos, right? And we have to, I think, break that mold and collaborate a bit more. I feel that sometimes, maybe this is a bit of a cliche, but sometimes it feels as though we are afraid to share ideas, to expose ourselves to competition. I think that's rather unhealthy. The way one actually measures how successful an idea is by getting people to break it down first and foremost. So it's great to have the strength of the many. So if I can share a slide, because I am getting old now and my memory is failing me. Yeah, this should be it. So, is it okay? Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this gives, so in a way, this gives you an idea of where we are today. So today we have 44 unique operators in our space. We have 550 square meters, so we don't have thousands of square meters of office space, but we have 44 unique operations, ranging from shipping, aviation, tech, gaming, and so on and so forth, education, okay? We have 400 plus flexible workspace users, not necessarily utilizing them at all of them being here all the time, but utilizing them for shared space, for workshops, and so on and so forth. We have a community of over 30,000 individuals, okay? And we also have an investment in 5 startups, where we managed to get around about 900,000 in startup financing. Right? So what I am saying this because we often find it very hard as startups and as entrepreneurs to actually get that help or that belief in us that we can make it. And I think that these numbers in a way show that if there is dedication and if we collaborate, and we find ways how to, everybody, a win-win situation for everyone, and making sure that whatever we take on is feasible and sustainable, then the success stories are there, right? We are very, very keen on the projects that we have. Most of them are tech-based, and this is where we see our company, evolving, and this is the space that we want to be in. We've heard Giselle, and the very interesting crowdfunding opportunity. We would like to hear more, right? Because we can offer it to the people that are in here, and I'm sure that there are, companies that are not looking for, hefty amounts of money to actually kick off their business, right? But they're looking for help and support from whoever is interested to support. To conclude, because I'm seeing Leonie to conclude, I want to make this very clear, because it is very important for me. We would like to collaborate with whoever is interested to collaborate, right? And we have an open door policy for whoever wants to be here and wants to share in what we have. And this is the only way we think that we can grow. So, let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gordon. It's interesting that you mentioned the silos. I tend to agree, and this is actually something that I've been going on about for many years. Unfortunately, here in Malta, we're a very small island. Practically everybody knows everybody, but still, somehow, rather than that helping collaboration, in certain cases, all right, I'm not generalizing because there are many brilliant examples of collaboration, but there can also be problems with, with competition and people doing their own thing and working against each other, really and truly. You might be interested in joining the Global Entrepreneurship Network through the Malta site. As I have been telling everybody else, I will type the URL into the chat box in a little while.
Sure.
And Gordon, since you're also in favor of competition, I suppose our next speaker is representing an organization that is, in a way, one of your competitors. I'd like to invite Ms. Jessica Camilleri. Gordon, could you stop sharing your screen, please?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Okay, so Jessica is a startup consultant at Basement to Boardroom, and they offer some similar services also. Yes, Gordon.
May I add to this? And it's Jessica, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I extend my invitation because we can have 1,000 competitors. It doesn't matter. There's the world is very, very big. So I invite Jessica and her team, to speak, and let's see how we can.
Thank you, Gordon.
We'll
Sorry, Jessica, before I hand over to you, Gordon, I actually said that because I know that is your mindset. I know that this is the way you work. And ultimately, we really need more people in the ecosystem across the board. I mean, in education, in the private sector, in the public sector, we all need to pull the same rope. Because ultimately, we all have one shared vision, one common aim. We are trying to promote entrepreneurship and innovation in different ways, but we need to pull the same rope and we need to work together. So on that note, Jessica, please, the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks, Leonie, for the invite. All right, so I'll be covering both Basement Boardroom and Pichora, which is our startup competition. So let me start with Basement Boardroom, which is our own incubator, which has 4 fundamental pillars. One is the consultancy, then we move on to mentorship, education, and our office hub, which is based in Marsa. So all 4 pillars run in parallel to each other throughout the 6 months in incubation. The consultancy pillar is split into 6 steps. We go through from a business planning, and each step has to be completed in order to move to the next. So if it's not a viable project idea or we haven't found the right market fit, we wouldn't move to corporate structure. So there is no company formation or M&A creation if we don't have a feasible business plan. So then we would move on to policies and procedures. So we ensure that quality of the product or service is there. Then we move to our partners with marketing strategy. And then we have as well a step where we teach how you can do your own bookkeeping and monitor performance, and how do you run payroll and design your employment contracts. Finally, we move to valuation and fundraising. Now, fundraising, most of the founders kind of fear it a bit. So some prefer bootstrapping. So we would tap into multi-enterprise and business enhance and MCST type of funding, or else we would move to angel investors as well. So we have a network of angel investors, and we would be started pitching and doing pitching sessions with them. For mentorship, we have partnered up with YPO. So a bit of background on YPO. Its members, they have 34 members. Thankfully, everyone have signed up to be a mentor on our program. Their mentors must have, in order to be eligible, 17 million in annual recurrent revenue, plus a minimum of 2 million wage bill. So they are very high level C-suite mentors. So any type of issue or obstacle that the founders might come across throughout their journey, I'm sure we can mentor them accordingly, whether it's real estate, whether it's legal, whether it's internationalization. Throughout the pool, we'll manage to find the right partner for that particular startup. Besides doing the consultancy and mentorship, for us, having a very solid founder, we believe that it gives more success, possibility for success for that startup. So we do workshops and seminars with regards to public speaking, to time management, to life coaching as well. So the life coaching would help as well with decision-making kind of skills. Then we have the office hub. So we don't have a 500 square meter office space. We only have 12 desks. So it's for those particular startups that would be incubating in that quarter. So there are dedicated desks, hot desks, there are boardrooms. If you want to, showcase with a new client or a prospective client, you can book one of those meeting rooms, and so on and so forth. Now the question is, how do you get access to the incubator? So there is the Pichora competition, which I will be explaining shortly. There are schemes by multi-enterprise and business enhance in order to support through the cost. And we had also cases where an angel investor would be willing to sponsor it in order to make it a condition before they invest. The duration would be of 6 months, and the intakes are every quarter. And these are some of our networks. I won't mention all of them. Most of them have presented today, so you'll be aware of them. These are some startups that we helped in the past, whether it was a full incubation or partially. And then we move on to Pichora. And Pichora is an annual startup competition where anyone with a business idea, irrelevant of how early stage it is able to apply. So we wanted to create Pichora. We only started 2 years ago. So this year was the 2nd edition. And we wanted to create a space where we could find and select very early stage startups. and give them an opportunity to tap into funds without giving equity, and also going into prizes which are in kind. So it's a mix of cash and in kind prizes. These are the partners that we had this year. Then to go a bit into the process. So there is application stage. The application is very raw and it's very easy to fill in. You don't need to have a full-blown business plan to do it, but you'll need to do a 30-second pitch video. And this is very useful at selection committee stage and for pitch training purposes. So we would know and have an idea of the pitching skills. After the 30-day window of application submissions, we would move into application review and approval, and then on to our selection committee, which is based on sector-specific selection committees. We would have 5 over a 4-hour time frame, and they would review and choose the top 10 finalists that would move on to the final. Pitch training this year, for example, was given by JA Malta and ICE Malta in order to ensure that there are the right skills in order to pitch in front of the judges. There's a further mock pitch mentoring pairing that might be, for example, with either prior year winners, or for example, I know the next speaker was one of the mentor pairing. And then you finally face the judges. We have 5 judges with your 500-second pitch. This year, one of them was Dr. Marta Sportelli, representing the chamber. And then on to the next. So who should apply? There's a bit, I won't go into it all. I know we're tight with time. I'll share the presentation for CAS, who, what, and where one should be applying. And this year we've launched Pichora Talks. So if you want a bit of information and knowledge and awareness of what's happening in the startup ecosystem locally, we had some successful startups showcasing their products and services. We had talks about stakeholders discussing issues that we're currently facing and how we're going to solve them. And we had also, which I really like, the solo talks. So it's the founders themselves that have made it in the past, reminiscing on their stories and their journeys and the obstacles, what they faced in order to inspire new and upcoming entrepreneurs.
Okay, thank you very much, Jessica. That looks like a lot of fun. I saw many familiar faces in that video as well. And so once again, because we are so short of time, I would like to ask you to type your contact details and any relevant information into the chat box so that our audience can get in touch with you if they would like further information. And now, last but not least on our program is Ms. Violetta Bonenkamp, who is the founder and CEO of Female Switch. Violetta, to the best of my knowledge, has only recently moved to Malta after being in the Netherlands and in other countries, but she has already made quite a splash in the startup community. Violetta, are you here?
All right, so let me try to see if I can squeeze 44 slides into 10 minutes. I'm going to try to make it short. Yes, Jessica, don't laugh. I can do it. Believe in me. So, all right, so we are a startup game for women. I'm pretty sure you're going to ask me why for women, but I'm going to leave that for later. For now, I would just like to do a bit of a demo of the game because it's always so much easier to see than for me to be talking about that. So it is an actual digital browser-based game, and you start with creating your own unique avatar. Then you select a role that you want to play in the game. You can be a founder of the team, you can be a team member, you can also play as a mentor or an investor, and you don't have to have any experience of either of these things in real life. So this is a game where you actually learn and you test, and this is like a simulator for you. So once you're ready with onboarding, you can basically start building your startup. And you start with figuring out what it is that you actually want to do. And the idea doesn't have to be a real life viable idea. It can be anything. It can be anything fun. It doesn't matter. It's just something that will attract the other team members to join your team, because one of the goals of the game is to teach users the process of creating a startup and running it. Then they can later on iterate it with any idea. So you come up with the name of your startup, you come up with a description, and then of course it's time to attract more people into the team. So you end up in the what we call an FMS village that has different places, and in those places you can either earn money or you can spend money. So we have the in-game tokens, and there is the whole economy behind it. Let's quickly go through the main parts of the village. So there's a lounge. As you can see, there's a martini glass there. So that's where people come to talk, to communicate, to read the latest news, to figure out what's happening later in the week. There are dashboards and all the prizes, all the winners of certain competitions, they're all going to be here. So you will know where you stand. Then there's a place where you learn. We call it a skill lab, and that's basically an online entrepreneurial education. At this moment, we have more than 30 modules on different topics that are connected to startups, and you actually earn tokens if you successfully pass those modules. So there are, I would say, three main priorities at the moment that we have in the education department. We want to make sure that everyone understands how startup ecosystems work from different perspectives. That's why we make sure that this is a role-playing game where everyone understands that besides startups, there are also investors, there are mentors, and you have to figure out who wants what from that ecosystem. Then, of course, we want to make sure that people understand that running a startup is not just building something technically and then hoping that people will come and they will buy it from you. No, we want to prioritize the fact that there is a lot of marketing involved, that there is a sales process. You have to build the audience, you have to engage them. So this is even more important than the technical stuff, which we also teach, but we want to make sure that anyone, even without technical skills, can eventually, within a few days or even weeks, depending on the complexity, build something that will be a prototype or an MVP. So we explain how to use something that's called zero code tools to build anything that they want. And in order for people to believe that they can actually do that, we've actually used those very tools to build the platform itself. And we are fans of technologies like blockchain, like AI. We want to make sure that more people, especially more women, actually get on board it and understand what the technologies are about. So, but we do it, of course, in a very practical way. So, for example, in the Blockchain 101 module, you don't have theory. Your task is to install a wallet and mint your own NFT. So this is actually what you do within that module. And then you get this excitement, like, oh my God, that's not that complicated as I was told, right? If I could do this within this module, yeah, I'm going to continue and move on to other ones. Okay, so if you're a good student and you've earned a lot of tokens, you might want to figure out what to do with those tokens. So you go to the marketplace, you start, you go on a shopping spree, and then you can buy a lot of things in the marketplace. So the main idea is that you buy knowledge, you buy skills from someone else who is either your peer, the other user on the platform, or a mentor or a game master. For example, I'm one of the game masters on the platform. So here we have an example of one of the users selling a session with her for 25 tokens. And she promises that she's going to teach you how to use Miro, which is a digital whiteboard. So if you want to learn about a tool from someone who actually knows how to use them, hey, 25 tokens is a fair price. Of course, seeing as it's a startup game for girls, sometimes we want to buy clothes for our avatar. And now the game is in 2D, but we are eventually moving to 3D. We're already building parts of the metaverse where the offices will be relocated to. At this moment, you can already have a 3D avatar. And of course, you want to dress her up. So here you can see, I think that one belongs to me. And of course, I really, really adore the fluffy bunny slippers, and I wish I had them in real life. All right, so after the shopping spree, of course, you have to figure out, do you actually have any money left in your account? So we take personal financing very seriously. you have your own wallet as an individual where you can see what it is that you have coming in, what's going out, and there are multiple ways to earn more tokens on the platform if you're fed up with studying. So here, just an example of what's coming in, what's going out. So you learn to manage your finances. You have to make sure that you still have money in the platform, because that's the idea. If you cannot afford to stay in the village, then unfortunately you lose. And then, of course, you as an individual are also part of the team. And here you have to do other things. You have to make sure that the company that you're part of survives and thrives. So once you start your company, you get an office, and it's a garage-looking office because you're just a poor little startup with no money. Yeah, you have 5 tokens on your balance, so yay. So you have nowhere to go but up. But first, you have to figure out how to deal with things that you don't want to deal with. So for example, all the legal stuff, because that's the part that startups neglect in the very beginning in real life, and then they get into a lot of trouble. So we make sure that we push them towards turning it into a habit to have all these legal things in their mind. So for example, they will have to sign a shareholders agreement with all the co-founders in the team. And yes, it is an actual, a short version of an actual shareholders agreement that our lawyer prepared for the game. It's only 9 pages. And they actually have to fill it in. They have to negotiate between the team how many tokens who is going to put in and what share of the company each is going to have. So it's a very entertaining, very fun, very complicated exercise. And look at it, now we have some more money in the company because some of the co-founders decided to put some share capital to make sure that there is something and the company looks successful. But there is, of course, the downside to everything. So you have to pay for being in the game. And if you have your office, then like in real life, there's rent to pay. So if you cannot pay the rent, you unfortunately get kicked out of the office, c'est la vie. And of course, if you have a company, there's a cost to have to run that company, and that cost is usually taxes. So, okay, how do you actually earn money as a company in the game? Well, you have to do stuff. You have to go through quests, and there is a lot of them, and they're all different depending on the level where you are and depending on who you have in the company. For example, there are some quests that you can only take if you have an investor in the team. So this is the idea of showing that investors do not only give you money, but they're also opening doors to you as a startup. That's just an example of one of the modules. For example, startups have to prepare a pitch deck, the usual thing. We give them templates. We make sure that they're not lost. And then once the pitch deck is ready, then they send it to game masters, and then game masters hopefully approve it. And then startups can start looking for mentors. So they can be as proactive as they want. They can find all the mentors on the platform, and they can knock on their door and say, hey, come on, look at my pitch. I'm wonderful. Please come mentor me. So once that happens, for example, hey, another legal agreement to sign. Yeah, well, this has to become a habit. And then the mentor becomes part of the team, and they're supposed to help the team get a good investor. So together they start preparing a video pitch, and they can do so by communicating on the platform. They have their own private chat, so everything that they want to do. And then, of course, once the video pitch is approved by the game masters, then they can start looking for the investors, and investors can start looking for the startups, and hopefully there's going to be a match. They start negotiating. Of course, there's going to be some legal stuff to figure out how much of the investment is going to the team and what the investor is getting for that. And if the investor invests, the company gets more money, and hey, you can move to a better office. Look, this one even has a window, so things are going well for you, but make sure that you can actually pay the rent for this office. And yeah, the more quests you win, the higher up the levels you go, the higher up the FMS tower you go. So that's the goal of the game, to go up and not down. That's it for the demo of the platform. Just a few more things I wanted to add. one of the questions that I usually get asked, okay, it's a game, but what does it have to do with real life, right? So one of the things that I always mention is this sub-project that we have that we call life certificates. So, which means basically everything that you do in the game, every achievement, every skill you gain gets transmitted, gets updated onto your certificate that you can share with anyone you want. And that shows to people who are looking at it how much you have actually learned in what period of time. And they can see the actual tasks you've made. So if, for example, you've created a pitch, you can give people the rights to actually view that pitch. So it's not just a piece of paper, but it's a piece of interconnected data that you can link to anything you want, and it grows together with you. So it's sort of like a portfolio. Okay, so the status of where we are now, we've run a few pilots over the past year. Now we're in preparation for the official launch that's going to happen in the beginning of next year. But even now we are urging people to sign for the wait list, not to miss the beginning, because there's going to be a pre-launch as well. So you can do that by going to our website. Also, if you cannot wait until next year, or if you're not a woman, then there's also a startup school on our website that's open to anyone, and that's free. You can sign up and you can go through the educational modules by yourself immediately. And of course, also if you're in Malta, then we would really love to see you at our startup villa party. We already had 2 of those. They've been a blast. I think everyone loves the idea of having those with food, drinks, and a pool. So we're definitely going to have one more next year before the launch. So there's also a sign-up list for that, so that we don't actually, miss sending you an invitation. So I urge everyone to sign up. And that's a link to our website if someone wants to scan it, but I will also write it in the chat. So it's femaleswitch.com. And there's a lot more there that you can just research. I don't know how I did on time, but kind of felt like I made it.
Well done, Violetta. Yes, indeed, it is 8 p.m. sharp. So we are right on time to wrap up this event. So thank you all very much. In particular, thank you very much to our speakers for giving up some of their time to be with us this evening. And of course, thank you and well done to everybody who sat relatively still for nearly 3 hours. I know I started to struggle at the end and I started to finish, as Gordon pointed out, but we made it. Best wishes to you all. Thank you.